Okay. All right, like I said, I am Joe Durkin. I'm the program manager at Philly VIP. I have met some of you. I am eager to meet all of you who I have not met yet. I'm joined by Erin Agnew, who is a staff attorney focusing on homeownership, and you'll hear from her in a second. Mike Jones, senior staff attorney focusing on homeownership at VIP. And like I said, Eileen Quigley, one of our homeownership volunteers. Move us along. Yeah, okay, we have an agenda, which is we've completed our introductions. I am going to give you a brief introduction to VIP itself and how you can use your law degree or your legal knowledge to volunteer and combat tangled titles in Philadelphia, who we are, who our clients are. And then I'm just going to pass it over to Erin and Mike, who are going to talk to you more about tangled title itself, which is what this really is about. We're trying to combat this big systemic problem in the city. And then we're going to focus on deed drafting, which is one of these types of cases that VIP volunteers handle. What goes into a deed drafting case, the timeline, what you can expect, working with the client, drafting the deed, using the Tangled Title Fund, all this good stuff. Like I said, we're going to hear from Eileen, who's done a lot of this work, and then we'll have time for questions, talk about what it's actually like to volunteer, resources we can give you, and next steps. So VIP was founded in 1981 as a way for attorneys from the private bar to be involved in delivering legal services to Philadelphians, low-income Philadelphians. So our mission, which is on the screen here, is to leverage the powerful resources of the Philly community to provide quality volunteer legal services and ensure access to justice for low-income Philadelphians. And I only read that whole thing out loud to point you to the part where it says powerful resources of the community. That refers to all of you, everyone who's on this call, in large part. Our volunteer attorneys, other legal volunteers. This is actually a great, deed drafting is a great way for paralegals and non-attorney volunteers to get involved in our work. These are the resources and the supporters that we're talking about. This is what makes our mission work. So again, we're really thankful to all of you for being here, for volunteering. If you have volunteered or if you're interested in volunteering, we don't get anything done without you. We rely entirely on volunteers for our work. I think, Erin, there's another slide about that. Yes, so Philly is the poorest large city in the United States. Some of you may know that. If you don't, it is an unflattering fact about our city that at least a quarter of people in this city, which is something like 400,000 people in Philly, are living in poverty, and many more of those in what's called deep poverty. Something like a third of children live in poverty. And that's just kind of scratches the surface of the systemic issues in our city. We were founded, like I said, to address a civil justice gap between the availability of legal services and the number of people in the city who need civil legal services but cannot afford an attorney. So the idea and our model, which has worked for the last 40 years and continues to make a difference in Philly, is that volunteer attorneys and other legal volunteers can close this civil justice gap by stepping up, taking on a VIP case, and representing one of these low-income people who need volunteer legal help. Our clients, we're focusing on deed drafting in this session. We help people with a really wide variety of civil legal matters. We help individuals, families, we help small businesses also. I'm not going to get into the whole breadth of what VIP does, but if you'd like to learn more, I'll post some links to our website. You can email me or Erin or anyone who works at VIP to learn more about what we do. I will just say that the clients that we help, we have a cap of, I think it's 200 or 250%. It changed recently, of the federal poverty guidelines, but either way, it is not a high number. The most our clients could be making, and this is a number from 2022, so I need to update this, but the most our clients could be making, a family of 4, would be $55,000 a year to be eligible for our services. In reality, most of them are making much less than that. The average income for a VIP client in a household of 1 last year was around $14,000, I think, the last time I looked at that. So all that is to say, these are people who need legal help but could never afford it without the help of folks like all of you. Okay, Erin, take it away.
So digging in now to looking at Tangled title, which is what you are here to address as a deed drafting volunteer. This is from a report by the Pew Charitable Trust. So this is a fairly recent sort of deep dive into the percentage of Tangled titles. And you can see that the darker shades of blue in this map of the city are demonstrating the highest percentages of Tangled titles. Tangled title, of course, meaning anyone who is living in a home to which they do not have legal title. And what's wonderful about deed drafting cases is that when you are stepping in to work with a client on a deed drafting case, you are stepping in very close to the finish line. It is document drafting. It is not a months-long process. And so you're working with someone who has the capacity and has done some legwork to untangle the title to their home, which will empower them to really manage it successfully, safely, and sustainably moving forward. And you can see that in some of the neighborhoods that we know to be historically disenfranchised around Philadelphia, we're seeing higher concentrations of more percentages of Tangled titles, between 4.4 and 6.5% of properties in those dark blue areas in a Tangled title sort of pause trap situation. And what's important too is to highlight that while this is a civil justice issue, as well as an economic justice issue, it is also a racial justice issue. The highest percentages of Tangled titles are also in homes that are owned by Black Philadelphians. And some of this overlaps with income, but Black neighborhoods being the most impacted makes it incredibly meaningful for the moment that the city is in and moving forward as a sustainably developing city and not an exclusively developing city. And so accessing legal aid, accessing the competent counsel and advice and document drafting resources of a volunteer attorney like yourselves is hugely impactful. So looking as well at sort of when titles become tangled. As time moves forward, tangled titles tend to resolve themselves, which is why we are seeing the most tangled titles sort of sticking and remaining tangled, remaining a source of inaccessible equity, remaining a problem for homeowners who cannot get repairs completed on the property in the last 10 years. And when I say resolve on their own, that is not to say that homeowners sort of automatically get a deed in their name or resolve the issue in a very favorable way. Oftentimes, these resolutions are homes that are being lost to sheriff's sale or tax foreclosure actions. And so helping a client get on title keeps families from being displaced, which means that you are serving an immediate urgent issue as well as the longer term sort of sustainable housing, affordable housing issue. So when you step in, it's useful to think about your work on a deed transfer case in 4 stages. You connect with your staff contact person at VIP and your client. You draft the materials necessary to convey title to your client. You review those materials. We always ask that you allow us to review those documents with you. And then those documents are executed and recorded. So we'll think about it in these 4 stages, and that is really just to help you sort of move through a case that you'll take on in the future in a nice streamlined way without any concern that you're missing steps. So beginning with the connection element. However you receive cases, maybe you have a pro bono firm coordinator, maybe you receive our newsletters, maybe you very patiently read emails from VIP staff members who reach out to you about working on new matters. Once you accept the case, you'll review your case file. You'll connect with your client to introduce yourself, talk about the scope of your service, set up communication and timeline expectations, and then complete a representation agreement. We ask that you'll always share your completed representation agreement with us so that we can ensure that your work with your client is covered by our malpractice insurance. We are the primary malpractice insurer for most of our volunteers. So if that's a concern or question you had, please don't worry about it. We have you covered in that regard. So you've accepted your case. It may be coming from our website. Maybe you find that you have capacity to take on some new pro bono matters. Maybe you say yes to a volunteer. We will follow up when you say yes with a case summary and conflicts. We ask that you turn around the conflict screening in sort of your reasonable time frame, and we're always available to provide follow-up information as needed. So today we're going to be thinking about a case summary for Ralph R., who is a real and very successfully served VIP client. And his case summary, maybe you are drawing it from the website for today's example, is that he was living as the primary care provider for his father in his father's home. His mother is alive, but chose not to serve as estate administrator. So Ralph R. is coming forward with letters of administration, granting him the right to act as a state administrator. We have the last recorded deed placing title in the father's name, and we are going to recommend a deed format for you to move forward. So the summary is in the chat if you would like to reference it as we move forward and sort of think through how this case would work, where we all sort of a unified hive mind volunteer. So once conflicts have cleared, the case summary looks good to you, we will send you a full case file. And you can see here an example of a case file sort of outline. You will get a breakdown of what is coming to you in terms of the materials we already have assembled for the case. And any clarifying information for this case, we wanted to ensure that the volunteer understood why the letters of administration were particularly granted as letters testamentary. So we provided that little sort of footnote of a heads up. So the case file will always absolutely include, for a deed transfer, the last recorded deed, which is important because that's where we are going to be drawing the legal property description from. It will include client case information, basic case notes, so you can get a sense of how the case was prepped, and communication information, and then any other necessary documents to convey title, like documents opening an estate, or the record owner's will, anything like that. Here's a snippet of specific examples of what these documents look like. Now, because in this example, we are taking title from an estate, we have the will that describes how title should be conveyed. We have the last recorded deed, and we have the letters of administration. So you will be able to see all of that and sort of move forward assured that we have what it will take to record your deed successfully. So once you've oriented yourself, reviewed, maybe had a strategy call or a handoff call with your VIP contact person, you can reach out to your client, or they will be coached to reach out to you in a letter that you can see an example of here, introducing the client to the attorney who's going to be stepping in as their volunteer. In that conversation, just make sure the client understands when they should expect to hear from you, what your communication timeline is, and what you need from them. Set up your representation agreement in that conversation or as a follow-up. We are happy to assist with getting digital signatures on representation agreements, and then confirm their goals for the property. Make sure that you're moving forward with a shared understanding of exactly how the deed is going to look. So that brings us to the conclusion of the connection, that first stage of stepping into a deed transfer matter. So we wanted this to be a little bit more interactive. So we have, again, sort of that case outline, and thinking as though you are a volunteer stepping in on this matter. What questions would you have for your VIP staff contact person? How would you be preparing to explain your role to the client? And anything else that you'd like to flag or reflect on at this point in the training. Folks are more than welcome to unmute themselves, answer in the chat, anything that you'd like to do to engage if you want.
Eileen, I think it might be helpful. Yeah, please, right now for you to share any thoughts and insights that you have on this beginning process.
Yes, I was just waiting to make sure if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask, but just to add my perspective, thank you, first of all, VIP, for having me on today. I really appreciate it. I've been doing volunteering for VIP for over 12 years. I started basically after I went over to Ballard Spahr as a real estate attorney. I was at the city law department before that. So doing pro bono was a new venture for me as an attorney in private practice. And I can tell you, it was a little nerve-wracking in the beginning, but VIP was always there to talk me through every issue that arose. Some of these deed transfers are very straightforward. It's a deed of confirmation or a deed of correction. It's going from one person to our client, or there's a mistake on the deed, a misspelling of a name. But handling these cases for clients, so they showed you a tort client earlier. I can tell you that working with the clients for these deed transfers changes the whole dynamic for them. It gives them access to home ownership and home repair programs within the city. It gives them the security they need to know that their property is less likely to be caught up in a fraudulent conveyance, people taking advantage of them, or the previous homeowner, and the records that are out there. So it protects the client. They're always very appreciative. And I hate to say that I do this for other people, because you really get so much back in helping people too. So it's really a win-win situation. If you do have a pro bono administrator at your firm, you can always follow up with them and see if they have cases. I know the real property section, Philadelphia Bar Association real property section, has a very long and close relationship with VIP, and they've always offered cases that way. And if you wanted somebody to work with on the deed transfer, on your first deed transfer, you can always talk to somebody within your firm. As I said, if you have a pro bono administrator, talk to them, and they can reach out to your firm and see if there's anybody else that wants to work on it. But you always have the security of knowing that VIP will be there for you and talk through any issues that arise, because sometimes there are odd things that come up, but it's always interesting. So it's not something that's straightforward all the time. It keeps you on your toes, and it adds some additional layers of information and knowledge that you didn't have before. So as I said, I've been doing these for well over 12 years, and pro bono is one of the best parts of practicing. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Eileen. That was wonderful, and you brought up a really wonderful point of working alongside someone. If ever you enter into any VIP case, from deed transfer to guardianship to probate to quiet title to anything like that, you absolutely use your resources from your firm, but you can also rely on Philadelphia VIP to assist in finding a mentor for you. We do have a number of people who are able to jump in and just guide you through the nitty-gritty. And so if there are any questions that you have when you get this case file and you're like, I accepted this case, I've reviewed it, I have further questions, I just need someone to help me through this. Always feel free to reach out to us to ask questions, and we can direct you, or we can find someone else. Like, this is an opportunity for you to grow your strengths and skills, to develop those strengths and skills, and also you can find this as an opportunity to grow your network as well. Excuse me. A great point that Grant had brought up, if I may, was mortgages. If you're reviewing the case file and you notice that there's a mortgage that is on the property that's currently active, Aaron has touched on this in response. Possible mortgages are a great thing to flag. Obviously, if there's a mortgage on the property, there are further questions that you'll need to have. Is the mortgage active? Is the client making payments? Is there risk of foreclosure? Often we've reviewed these, we've noted these, we've made sure that we know what's going on. But if you see these, ask about them, and we can make a determination about whether or not we need to assist the client with getting onto a housing counseling agency. Or if, frankly, we say, this is a very low risk right now, and getting the client on title is actually going to benefit them for their mortgage in the long run. Or maybe there's another kind of a risk that's down the line, that maybe there's a reverse mortgage, and that's something that we would really need to think about. So if you notice a mortgage, absolutely great ideas to bring that up to VIP. Thank you, Grant, for noticing that.
Yes, that is a phenomenal flag. So as you have reviewed the file, you've asked the follow-up questions to us, to the client. The next thing, once you and client are prepared, is to move on to the drafting phase. We provide deed templates. We have templates that reflect our most common varieties of conveyance. And so we say this not to shoehorn you into copying and pasting, but to let you know that you can focus on the functional language that moves title forward. You do not have to focus on retyping a deed word for word. So we'll ask that with an understanding of how title is conveyed, you identify the correct deed template, and that you move forward with bringing the property description and appropriate recitals into that template language. So quickly touching on, we have a whole training that is recorded and so incredibly educational on types of conveyances and sort of a tour of the legally required aspects of a deed in Pennsylvania. But because that is recorded, this is more of the nuts and bolts of how you apply that knowledge. So a quick review: deeds of correction is the variety of conveyance that moves title forward when there are spelling mistakes, really easily reconcilable things, and the recital information will explain the typo and then provide the correct information for the new deed. A deed of confirmation is a deed that functions to make the grantee's interest explicit. So if the last recorded deed was holding the property in trust for your client, then a deed of confirmation will confirm them as moving forward as the title holder out of trust. Where there are court orders between divorced couples and one has passed, or other court orders that convey title to client explicitly, a deed of confirmation will manage that. And very commonly, a deed transferring property from an estate and all heirs. So this is where the client has opened an estate and all heirs of the estate are prepared to sign the deed conveying title to client. So you will know from the case summary and documents at least the idea of how title will be conveyed, and you'll be able to pretty confidently select the appropriate template for conveyance. The volunteer resource library lives on our website. You will receive links to it in your referral email, But if you are ever not finding what you're looking for with the search function or in the category of record that you're searching for, please just let us know. We are happy to highlight the right resource area for you. We are happy to email a document directly to you. And from time to time, we have volunteers who click on a link that leads nowhere. And we also so appreciate when that is raised to us. If you see trainings that are missing, documents that are missing, or need updates, please let us know. We will make those updates. That's really so helpful in making us able to assist you behind the scenes. So you found the right template, you're confident in the language that will be coming forward. Now you are in the moment of drafting the new deed. So you can open up the document and sort of highlight the areas that you are going to be typing through. Of course, the grantor, grantees, and then pull in the required language from the previous deed. So you can retype the property description, which is highlighted here in blue and yellow, shown on the left-hand side of your screen in the last recorded deed, and on the right-hand side in the deed that was written conveying to client. The recital will reference the last recorded deed. So that will be the OPA number, the tax parcel number, as well as sort of the recitation of the last recorded deed was from prior grantor to prior grantee. That's highlighted here in the navy box, and that's information you'll be able to pull forward from the last deed. And then the recital will also reference in the green bracket shows the recital of the last recorded deed packet information. And then in that dark navy box, the recital will continue to describe how title was conveyed to client. So either describing the need for a deed of correction or describing the estate file number under which the estate was opened, out of which title is conveyed. So this is just sort of a map to demonstrate to you that you're going to have the legally required sort of to have and to hold description already typed out for you. And you are going to know exactly where you are pulling the rest of the information as you are drafting the new deed. So that's a pretty short step of the process. So we're in another moment of pause and plan. Pulling back in the client that we've been thinking about as an example, you have the case file as it was sent to you, and you have in front of you the volunteer resource library. So what are you thinking about now in terms of effectively moving forward, getting the resources you need, and confirming that you know how client is taking title? Or again, always other things that folks are sort of thinking of at this point in the process.
Hi, Aaron, if I can just jump in while you're waiting to hear from the rest of the group. First of all, you're absolutely right. The resources on VIP are very extensive and very helpful. So as I said, not only can you contact somebody at VIP, but the resource library is just really phenomenal. I just wanted to mention a couple of instances where, you know, we were talking about these just being drafting the document. Typically it is drafting the document. You contact the client, you draft the deed, and it's a basic transfer. But sometimes some of the information is there's a sibling that's also involved, and you do have to write letters to that sibling, let them know what's going on. You have to get their consent that they will sign over their portion of the property to your client. So sometimes it doesn't take that long. Other times you want to make sure you send out a letter and a follow-up letter if you haven't heard from them. You can always run an issue by VIP, which may help too. And where do we go next? What else should we do as far as that's concerned? And I always like to, the one thing I like doing with these deed transfers is that, you know, when you're putting in those additional whereas clauses, that you're trying to make that conveyance as airtight as possible for your client. And I like to add even information that may not seem relevant, but you just add the whereas clause. This is what we did. This is why we're doing it. And just as Erin did say, you put in there why you are doing it. This is a deed of confirmation for this reason, or a deed of correction because of. So it's really a good time to clear up any reason why you're doing that, but also add information if it wasn't on the previous deed. I love looking at old deeds, but sometimes they're really pretty straightforward and you'd like to see more information in there. And if you have that, it's your opportunity really to add that into the deed for the client. And for anybody else doing a title search, if you think about all the people who may need to reference that deed at some point in time, and you're making it easier for everybody to understand what that chain of title looked like.
Totally, I second that 100%. And as the person who's, as one of the people rather, who's been sending a lot of the deeds to the Department of Records and seen what things that they're looking for when they are accepting a deed for recording, they want to see exactly how the grantor has received the ability to convey title to the grantee. And so like having that airtight narrative, as Eileen had said, is really helpful. So like, if it seems extraneous or maybe even like unnecessary because you're like, well, what does the death of this person have anything to do with that? Or why does this trust exist? Like these kinds of things, it's better to add them in and have people at VIP look it over and figure out what needs to be there and what doesn't, than to kind of have it be without there. Because Eileen again said, like the ultimate goal is insurable title, like title that is insurable, and having that clean narrative that lists explicitly how the grantor is able to convey that title is the perfect way to do that.
Absolutely. That's, I think, the perfect thing to be thinking about at this moment in the process. So with drafting done, we ask that you take a moment to review your drafts with us. We want to make sure that we are submitting the clearest, most airtight title possible, and this review moment is part of that. And we also are available to answer questions. Deeds must be submitted with Pennsylvania and Philadelphia transfer taxes. Transfer taxes are often zero for VIP clients, but even when there is no bill or liability to the client, they have to be filed. And you will always know, as we are sending case materials, whether transfer taxes are going to be due or not. And in the unique circumstances where they are due, we are going to be submitting also an application for the Tangled Title Fund, which we will talk about in a little bit more depth later on. So a quick refresher on transfer taxes. Even when exempt, they must be submitted. And you saw an example of them. Each form for the state and for the city is just one page. The most common exemptions that we see are from an estate to the heirs or one heir of that estate, lineal descendants, parents and children, and transfers between siblings. And when a transfer is taxable, it's most commonly because there is partial interest or total interest moving from a niece and nephew to an aunt or uncle or other folks in those sort of relational links.
Erin, if I could just jump in real quick, it's worth noting that that each taxable transfer might come in a different way. So like I'll explain this. If a grandparent dies and there's a portion goes to their child and a portion goes to their grandchild, because maybe that grandchild's parent, who was a child of the grandparent, died. The transfer from grandparent to grandchild is going to be transfer tax exempt. However, the transfer that the niece or nephew would give to the client, who is potentially the grandparents, the record owner's child, that aunt to uncle, niece to nephew kind of a transfer, that would be not exempt. So like there's different branches that may be exempt that would ultimately not. So you have to think about it in different different ways that each transfer is a different transaction. Just a thought, but Eileen, I think you had something.
Yeah, so if Erin could just go back to that last slide where the transfer tax form is.
Absolutely.
So, right, you'll be doing two, one for Philadelphia and one for Pennsylvania. I just want to note two things on there. The common level ratio, make sure when you are filling that out, if you're not sure what the common level ratio is, you can always check with the department, the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue. They'll have the common level ratios for every county in Pennsylvania. You just go to Philadelphia and you find out what that is. I believe it changes every 1st of July. The other thing is here we have, well, I see this form, it's a will or intestate succession, but typically you will be marking the bottom one, which is other, and that's going back to what Mike said about exemptions. You just want to make sure that it is exempt under that Pennsylvania statute. So if it's from a mother to a child, grandparent to grandchild, siblings, those are exempt from transfer tax, but you'll just want to go through those exemptions under that law just to confirm if something isn't as clear to you as it should be.
And
Thank
it's
you.
also, I'll also add into that, Eileen, wonderful point. The Department of Records does like to, even if you do put in will or intestate succession, on the other, they would also like it to be filled in to say like transfer, intestate transfer from mother to child. They would like to have that kind of description of what the actual intestate relationship is. Or if it's a live conveyance, between two people who are actually living, it's not from an estate, they'd like to know that it's between, sister and brother kind of a thing. So just bear that in mind as well. That's something that VIP will always catch. We know what we're looking for, but just for you having a full rounded view of what is expected when submitting these documents.
Right, agreed, Mike. And if I ever reference that statute, I always have a description, a narrative, just as you said, what exactly is the transfer and why it's exempt, and then maybe in parentheses, the section. But yeah, they give you enough space to put that in there. And it's good for you to track it too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So again, also to highlight that we like to look at the transfer tax documents and make sure that we're submitting everything correctly the first time it's submitted. So we're here to assist and strategize with that as well. And with the drafting completed, it is now the moment, really celebratory, awesome part of the process to execute the deed. We have free notary services available in our offices. So if clients and anyone else who needs to sign title over are able to come to our offices, then we welcome that. We welcome you to be part of that execution process. And if you have a notary resource that you work with either at your firm or another community notary resource that client is going to be tapping into, we just ask that you retain the original and send us a scanned copy of the executed deed, scanned and signed transfer tax forms, and demonstration of payment of transfer taxes, if applicable. And again, if applicable, transfer taxes can be paid using the Tangled Title Fund. And so that's almost a separate process that goes through the Tangled Title Fund. So with the records executed, we record them. VIP is able to record all deeds for free thanks to a partnership with the Office of the Recorder of Deeds. Once the deed is successfully recorded, we will notify you and your client, and we ask that you help us be part of the process of making sure that client gets their original recorded deed in a way that works best for them. So we'll ask you to sort of stay on record as the representative in the case until client has the deed in hand. We can send by certified mail, we can meet and hand it off in our office as well. And here is just a little sort of snapshot of what the e-recording stamp looks like at the top of the deed that will be demonstrating that title is recorded in client's name. So now that execution and recording have happened in our sample client narrative, it's another pause and plan moment. Thinking about how VIP can best support you, what resources you anticipate using throughout your case. And then we have a hypo if folks would like to talk through it, but I want to open for sort of more general questions and reflections first.
Can I just jump in real fast too, Aaron, with regard to that? Every client is different. Some may have access to a computer, some may not. My advice is when you're ever sending them anything and it's coming out on legal letterhead and a legal envelope, make sure you call the client ahead of time and say, by the way, I'm going to be sending this engagement letter or the agreement or the deed, whatever you need to send to them, let them know. Because sometimes if people see mail from a law firm, they don't think that it's for them specifically, or they're not sure what it is, and they may recycle it. And it's best to let them know, hi, I'm going to be sending you this, my name, my firm, whatever's going to be on that envelope, make sure you look out for it. And then you'll be able to send it to them and they'll have that recorded deed. And just as Aaron said, it's great to know that VIP has that, but just be aware you may need to coordinate with a client as far as signing and notarizing that deed.
Absolutely. And that client coordination sort of gets to the hypo, which I'll talk through very briefly, is that sometimes clients have a mobility limitation and need additional support to execute a deed. In that instance, we do have a few travel notaries who volunteer with us and provide those services. And so please rest assured that almost nothing at this point in the process is a stopping point. We are here to strategize and find additional and unique resources as needed.
And these are things that we've probably pinpointed in advance. We hope that we've done it, but as you know, things arise, maybe we haven't been able to learn. We're doing our best to catch all of the little facets of each case. Also important is in the execution, having anyone who's signing the deed have a valid photo ID, and we're trying to catch those as well. But it's very important for notarization. So speaking with the client in advance, letting them know that they'll have to be using a valid photo ID just gives them a little bit of a prep. And that can be a part of the conversation in the beginning. That's something that we discuss too, but just little things to think about.
Aaron?
Yes.
If I could ask a question. Before the case gets to the volunteer, have you guys done due diligence with the person who's to take title that they don't have any creditors who could then act against the property?
Yes, that is a phenomenal question and a great thing to highlight. We do have a due diligence conversation, and deed transfer clients all receive a letter summarizing that conversation, which describe taking title at risk versus them choosing to go out on their own and order a title report for the transfer. And I only say go out on their own because we do title reports when the Tangled title fund is going to be accessed, but not otherwise. We do a full Philodocs sort of chain of title search for the property. And we do discuss with clients if they have personal creditors, the risks associated with stepping into title, and advise them to deal with some of that debt and get it sort of in hand and manageable before they're recording title in their name.
Okay.
That is the best thing to highlight.
But it's not our responsibility to help them try to resolve any credit issues they may have.
Not in this representation. If something arises that we have not caught, it is possible for us to open a separate case for a client to work with a volunteer attorney who's particularly a collections side volunteer attorney, and then sort of settle that before the deed is recorded. But as Mike has said throughout, we really work to flag these things as early in the process as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it's not your responsibility, but if you discover something we have not discovered and you raise it to us, then that is tremendously beneficial to the client.
To distinguish the simple deed transfer case from maybe a bigger the probate case. In probate cases, Steve, you experience like a client who maybe you encounter a client whose deceased record owner has some claims against the estate. They have some creditors. That's a little bit more in depth, and that's a conversation that you would have with VIP and with the client. But in a deed transfer case, it is not within the scope of representation for you to bring that up. However, if you learn about something, it's okay to share it with us. But as Aaron said, we generally do as much due diligence as possible to make sure that we're not giving you something that's going to absolutely blow up exactly what you're trying to do there. We want to make sure that it's smooth.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in too, because I've had cases where absolutely VIP does its due diligence, but sometimes, as anybody knows, a client may not share something early on, and you may learn something later that does change what you're doing. Obviously, VIP, you and VIP are partners. They need to know so they can either address that. You can address it with the client, or VIP will reach out. And sometimes you just can't follow through with the case. I've had a deed transfer that seemed simple enough, but going through in deeper conversations with the client, there were some things out there. He was with this, it was in the name of a temple, and he was a board member, but then didn't want to contact the temple in order to have the deed transfer. I mean, the bottom line was we could not transfer that deed because there was just a whole other nonprofit issue going on, contact, notice, consent, and we had to just back out of the whole matter and explain that to the client, because he wasn't working with us either. So sometimes, and it's only once in the last, so many years, but things happen. And I did have VIP there, and we went through conversations, we had calls, we had emails, because we wanted to help them. But the bottom line is sometimes you can't, because you can't do anything with that information, because they won't help you with it, and you can't do it. It's not legal.
So those are all super important things to highlight throughout, and sort of meaningfully addressing the last steps to get title conveyed. Mike is going to go into the Tangled Title Fund, and particularly how it relates to deed transfer clients and how you can be accessing it.
Thank you. As many of you who have probably done VIP homeownership cases before or know, the Tangled Title Fund is a fund that exists for clients, for clients across Philadelphia, not just the VIP clients, but legal services clients, or anybody who maybe meet the eligibility criteria. They're able to access funds that can pay for administrative fees. And I'll get into what that means specifically in a moment, but for your knowledge, the Tangled Title Fund, or TTF, is a grant program that's funded by the city. It's administered by Philadelphia VIP. One of my colleagues, Layla, is the Tangled Title Fund administrator. It is specifically for Tangled Title cases. The primary goal is to ensure that those who are living in their homes are able to get title to their homes. There is a committee of people who are involved in making sure that these clients are the funds are being used appropriately, and that the clients are receiving the appropriate resources to make sure that they are going to have access to not just TTF, but if they need housing counseling, if they need estate planning, if there's a senior who has tax issues, or if there's energy, like gas or utility issues. The committee reviews the applications with their own perspectives to try and figure out how is the best way to get this client title, and what other ancillary things that might not be ancillary to them can we assist them with? Aaron, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. The Tangled Title Fund is only going to be used in deed transfer cases when there are certain things to pay for. And those big things are transfer taxes and inheritance taxes. Generally speaking, as Aaron had said, most of our deed transfer cases for our clients will not have transfer taxes because it's likely that they've already opened an estate and that they are going to receive title through intestacy and through these family exemptions. However, once in a while, there might be a deed transfer case where somebody they don't have a tax exempt relationship, or maybe they've come to us and they said, I've already probated the estate of my grandmother. However, I need to pay the principal for the inheritance taxes. And we don't typically do that, but if there's some reason that we feel that it's necessary, we can assist the client with getting the inheritance tax principal paid. We will always make it explicit in our case summaries that transfer taxes are expected to be paid and that you'll need to apply to the Tangled Title Fund. We also, just so you know, all of our staff is assisting in drafting or completing the Tangled Title Fund application in advance. So you should generally receive a completed Tangled Title Fund application if it's necessary. That includes the income documentation and the case summary, and if necessary, a title report. But the big picture is the Tangled Title Fund is there. It'll pay for probate filing fees in probate cases, transfer taxes, inheritance tax principal, water and real estate tax principal, advertising and publication if there are any necessary in a quiet title case, or if maybe you're doing a 3546, which is a number that if you don't know, you don't need to even ask about it. Next slide, please, Aaron. Thank you. That's all from me.
So we just wanted to, because we have Eileen here, who has been such a resource throughout, we wanted to both speak about, I'll go to Joe first, speak about how to connect with VIP and get set up with a case or attend future events. And then also offer an additional opportunity for Eileen to share reflections and insights.
Thank you, Erin. We are wrapping up, everyone. We will let you go by 1. If you would like to stay, we are free. So I think, right? You guys are free? Okay, so if you would like to ask questions, talk with us more about something going on in your case or about a potential case, please stick around. I just want to share some info before we finish, in case people need to leave at 1. Could you go to the next slide really quickly, Erin? Kind of jumping ahead here, I will talk more about what we just discussed, but we have additional trainings coming up, which you can find on our website on the events page, which is phillyvip.org/events. February 14th, there will be a training similar to this one, 1-hour virtual training on the other side of addressing tangled titles, which is drafting wills, powers of attorney, advanced planning for low-income clients. March 8th, there is going to be a CLE training hosted by VIP and Deckert on representing low-income tenants in eviction cases in municipal court, kind of different side of our work. And then Mike and Aaron made some passing references to probate, which is sort of the longer, more involved cases that we handle in addressing tangled titles. There's going to be a CLE on practical probate, practical steps in addressing a VIP probate matter sometime in March. If you're not on our mailing list, you can get on our mailing list by emailing one of us or by filling out the volunteer enrollment form, which I'm linking to in the chat. You can also look at, on VIP's website, all of our available cases, which are also in the chat on the case listings page. Or you could email one of us. You'll get a follow-up email with all this info, and please use that as a way to start conversation if you'd like.